everybody. Welcome to Dive Deep. I'm Shelby Cornett, and I'm the ministry assistant at Cambridge City Christian Church. And this is Danny, my worker.
Worker? What do you mean by
Because
that?
I'm the boss.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. You're the ministry boss.
So you're my worker
Okay, I'm the worker. Okay.
on the podcast.
Why are you just limiting it to the podcast?
Because you could fire me, technically. Right?
If I could, I would have already done it. So
Yeah, I guess I have kind of been here for a little bit now.
no, you do good, Shelby.
I've reached the point where I can't be fired anymore.
Yeah, you're tenured now.
So now you'd have to teach somebody else how to do my job.
Yeah,
It's just not worth it.
No, I'll just put up with it.
Yeah. Okay.
All right,
Down to business. I need to
down to business. Yeah.
We are in the series, What on Earth Am I Here For?
Is that a question you have? What?
Right? I had a brain moment, and I almost said something different, and I couldn't remember what series we were in.
A brain moment.
I was going to say brain fart, but I didn't know if that was appropriate.
Oh, you can't say fart on a church podcast, right?
I have to edit that out.
Yeah.
That's why I said brain moment. I had a brain fog,
Okay, that might be better.
a brain belch. I don't know. What do you want to call it?
All right. Okay. Wow.
The series is called What on Earth Am I Here
What on
For?
earth am I here for?
Period. It's not a question.
It is a question.
But I'm not questioning if it's called that. What
Okay.
on earth am I here for? Question mark in the parentheses, period.
Okay. All right. I think I'm tracking with you here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what it's
All right.
called. What on earth am I here for?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that we got that clear.
Yeah.
All right.
And this week, the sermon was called You Are Called to Belong.
Mm-hmm.
And I got my notes done
Okay.
as of 30 seconds ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually see, you thought I wouldn't have good notes because I procrastinated, but I have a few thoughts.
All right. Well, let's hear them.
Okay.
Let's hear the thoughts.
So the first point here was
Mm-hmm.
we often don't look for the best places to belong.
Yep.
I have done that.
Yeah.
I've made
We all have.
stupid choices about where I feel like I belonged at some point.
So, without being specific, what would you say were some of those places? Like, what type of places would you say?
Just like friend groups.
Friend groups, yeah, that's a big one when you're especially if you're a teenager, you know.
And like people that maybe I've like worked with in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't feel like I've ever had a job where it was a bad place to belong.
Yeah,
But maybe just not where I should have been.
not the most healthy maybe of places.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah. I mean,
Mainly friend groups was what I was thinking.
friendships
And
are
decisions being made within the friend groups.
yeah, friendships, workplaces, and I'm not even specifically saying like, the people in a workplace, but maybe it's just a job that's not the most like honorable job. I mean, there are some of those
Yeah.
out there. Yeah, I mean it's yeah, it's mostly people's what we're talking about there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the places where you shouldn't belong. Because literally a lot of times when you're with those friends or those people, then you go to places you shouldn't be at either.
Right.
Yes. So
Yeah.
Yep.
See, I
No.
made poor choices
Yeah.
with those
With
people.
those people. And
Not blaming those people.
no, you were part
It was
of
my fault.
Yeah.
But I made that decision to be with those people.
And we've all done that. We'll be with a group of people, and then we're like, ooh. I know that happened to me one time in college. Even though I was at a Christian college, it doesn't mean everybody that goes to Christian college is very Christian-like.
Yeah.
And I remember going with some friends one time. They weren't. I wouldn't even really call them friends. They were just some guys that were in our apartments and being somewhere, and they did something. And I remember sitting there thinking, "What am I doing here?" Like, and I never went with them again. And it wasn't anything that was like awful, but it was like I knew this was
Right.
honorable for God. And it was just, yeah. So we got to be careful with our friendships.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Another point was I feel like you can belong lots of places, but where do you belong first?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I think there's a difference
Mhm.
because people think like, because at first when I saw this sermon stuff, I was like, so I don't belong at work or I don't belong with my family, but you do belong those places.
Sure. Yeah.
That's just not your first priority.
right. Yeah. It's not about. It's not trying to say that all these other places you belong you need to throw aside and just belong to the church. That's not at all it. But the first place that God has created for you as a spiritual being is the church. Christ Himself inaugurated and started the church. It's referred to as the bride of Christ. So the church is the first place we belong to, and it's because it lasts for eternity. The church is both here and now, but it's also the church is in heaven. So yeah, that's the first place you belong, but you still have family and workplaces and friendships and whatnot. So yeah. So but a lot of times we don't put it in that order.
Right.
Like we don't think of our allegiance as being closer to those we go to church with, but really we should, because, and we've never really had to deal with this in our country, thankfully, but in many places around the world where the church is persecuted, you might have a brother that is a Christian and a sister that isn't, and there's persecution, and okay, which one is it? Is it your family or is it the church? The early church dealt with this a lot. I mean, people do today too, but in other places, but in those moments, it should be your allegiance to the church,
Right.
that supersedes. So yeah.
And we're in a place where it's easier to do that.
Yes.
Still not easy. Easier.
Yeah, I mean, there are some cultural, I don't know if prohibitions is the right word, but there's still some cultural boundaries that are there that's like, oh, you shouldn't do this, or yeah, I get what you're saying. But on the most part, we're not really forced into that choice. But it does affect what you do. I mean, if you're putting your family first, and I'm not trying to say that people should just forget about their families. But if your family is your only priority and the church has nothing, then you're missing out on the spiritual family that God's created for you. And so I know I heard some years ago somebody said if there's people, and I'm botching this, I'm sure a little bit, but if there's people that you go to church with that you can't stand, well, you better start standing them because you're going to be with them for eternity.
Right.
And I think that there is something to be said about that on a positive sense, a positive sense, that we should be working to work together and whatnot because of that. So
it's not just a for now.
No.
It's
yeah.
forever. You're in it for the
Yeah.
long haul.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And another thing was accept God's calling to belong. And it's hard to accept things when you don't know if it's the right decision or whatever. And I felt like this connected to me taking this job
Okay.
at the church. Because when I was contacted about it, at first, I mean, Jackson was really little. So I was like, I don't know. And then I came in and talked to you and I was like, I think this is where I'm supposed to be.
I think I could boss him around pretty easily.
Yeah. Fast forward a few years.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have said that at the time. But
but you would now.
But now I'm comfortable enough to. I just let it roll.
You've just named yourself the boss, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you guys said I was the boss.
You had a
first.
coup. We had a quiet coup in the office.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Whatever you say, Shelby.
Yeah. So what's your question?
I didn't have a question.
Oh, okay.
It's just like that made me think of
how he calls us.
how he called me
Yeah.
to be a part of the church, and because I would watch church online some before I came here, but I didn't really go to church. And
Right. Well, the passage that I shared with that in Ephesians 1:5, it says, God decided in advance to adopt us into his own family by bringing us to himself through Jesus Christ. This is what he wanted to do, and it gave him great pleasure. I like that. I like that verse there in Ephesians, because not only did he invite us into to his family, call us into his family, but he liked doing it. It wasn't like, oh, I've got to let them in the family.
Right.
And maybe sometimes that's what people feel like when somebody gets married and they have maybe a spouse that you're like, oh boy,
Yeah.
that's not at all
It's
the way
no.
Christ he's super excited, and it says actually from his own vantage point, it says it brings him great pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Like he enjoys seeing somebody new in his family.
Right.
So yeah, that's the calling that he made on your life,
Yeah.
and he took pleasure that you answered it.
That's like how we talked about with love a few weeks ago.
Mhm.
Like sometimes it's hard to love
Yeah.
people, but
Yeah.
God's just
Yeah,
he just loves.
he just loves.
I mean, he
Yeah.
probably sighs sometimes, like,
But I still love
"Oh,
you.
What are
Yeah.
you doing?
Yeah. Oh, I think it's more than a few times.
Yeah.
Probably every day, but yeah.
I think I still have like a little kid mentality of God.
Mm.
So I obviously know a lot more now.
Yeah.
But sometimes I still have that picture of like this huge old man sitting on a
Mhm,
cloud, like
mhm,
a
mhm.
grandpa with a big beard.
Yeah, right,
and,
right. That's the way a lot of people think of God.
yeah. And he's just like, oh man.
What? Let me ask you this, Shelby. So, seeing how you're kind of newer in your faith. I mean,
Mhm.
it's been a few years now, but you're still there.
Yeah.
Why do you think people have that image of God in their minds? Where does that come from?
I have no idea. I've thought about that before because I have not once like
Yeah.
read a book or
No.
seen a picture even of a old man portrayed to be God.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing in the Bible that portrays him.
But you know what I picture him like? And this is so not biblical. Like a wizard. Because in a way, it's like God is kind of magic.
Okay.
Like he's not magic,
I
he's
see
God.
what you're saying.
but
Like some of the
he
power,
has the power.
powers that he has is
Yes.
kind of what you see in some of the fictional stuff with wizards.
and I
yeah.
literally picture God with a robe.
Okay. All right.
More
Maybe-
of a wizard robe than like an old man cozy on a cloud robe. That's just what I see.
I tell you what, when you do these podcasts, you never know what you're going to end up talking about with Shelby.
Like,
Maybe I shouldn't have asked this question. I made a mistake. I apologize to those of you watching.
I've never seen Harry Potter, but there's like guys with the long
Yeah,
white
yeah.
beards, I think, in Harry Potter, right?
Yeah. I think I haven't watched much of Harry Potter either, but yeah, I think I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
What's his name? Like Dumbledore or something?
Yeah. Okay, that's it.
God.
Okay. So Dumbledore, you think what God looks like is Dumbledore?
Just really big.
Okay. Wow.
How big is really big?
Like, take a good sized cloud. And God just sits on it. Like dangles his feet.
Dangles his feet off the cloud.
That's what I picture. Like a magic carpet, but a cloud.
A magic carpet, but boy, this is like one of those
know.
situations. She's just digging a hole deeper and deeper.
He asked, though. Oh, see, I'm
So,
crying now.
all right,
'cause
where
I
do we
laughed.
start on this? And oh my gosh, well, the most important thing to remember is God's spirit, right?
Yeah.
So, are you like crying?
I laughed, so now
Oh.
I'm crying.
Oh, okay. You made yourself laugh from your description.
I'm laughing because I'm embarrassed.
No, that's fine. I mean, I think we do try to portray God in certain ways because there's something about
Maybe because he's
personifying
fatherly.
him because we find comfort in that.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you think of, a grandpa, there's something about a grandpa that makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Comfortable.
Like
Yeah.
protected and loved
Yeah.
by the wizard.
So, we have to remember God is spirit.
Yeah.
He's not flesh, not
Yeah.
blood. So that's why we have to be really careful when we start personifying him as Dumbledore, because he's spirit. Now, Jesus, when he came, Jesus is God.
Mm-hmm. He was personified, but he didn't look like an old man on the clouds.
How do you know?
Well, I mean, I guess I've just seen pictures of what he's supposed to look like.
With the beard and in the robe.
Yeah, and long
Yeah.
hair.
Yeah, and long hair.
Maybe what I'm picturing is just Jesus when he's old.
Okay. All right. Okay. I can see that. Okay.
See, that makes more sense than what I
Okay.
said before.
Okay. So how do you know Jesus had long hair and a beard? Do you know
I
that?
don't. It's
Yeah.
just pictures.
It's just a kind of a more modern idea of what Jesus
Mhm.
looks like. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is interesting to me just how we see what God looks like does
Mhm.
say something about how we see God. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like see him as a grandfather, like you just mentioned a minute ago. You see him as like loving and kind and kind of
Mhm.
laid back, and and the same thing kind of with Jesus, right? He always
Mhm.
looks kind of. I mean, let's just be frank. A lot of the pictures we see, he looks kind of dainty and
Mhm.
soft, and
Yeah.
Um, I have. I mean, I've no doubt Jesus did not look like the way we portray him now. I'm sure he
Yeah.
looked very different. But I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that I never think of him like that, because I do, because it's
Mhm.
been ingrained in my mind. I remember in Sunday school classes when I was 5 years old, looking at little books, and here's Jesus with the white, and the blue
Mhm.
sash, and I mean, it does affect the way you see God. So we have to be really careful though with that, because maybe we've personified God in a way that is not really reflective of his character. Like
Right.
with Jesus, we think of Jesus as this when we look at this, as dainty, soft.
Gentle.
I don't think Jesus was like that at all. We see in several instances he flips over tables, and
Mhm.
and he tells Satan, get behind me. I mean, he wasn't this soft guy that he's often portrayed to be.
He stood for what he believed.
Yeah.
You can't be dainty and do that super well
Yeah.
at
So
times.
and even with God, we have this image of him as a grandfather and all that, but in the Old Testament, I mean,
Mhm.
we see a lot of things. God destroyed cities,
Right.
and the struck down people. I mean, so it's different. So we got to be very careful
Yeah.
with that image that we have of God. I understand where it comes from, but
Mhm.
I don't know. I just thought
Like I
it'd be
feel like he
interesting.
could just like take his hands and like wrap around me, like
Yeah, protect you.
protect. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I just we've just got to be careful
Yeah.
with it. What's really interesting to me, and so I know, man, we're really going off track here. I know that, but what's interesting to me, so within Islam, their idea of God, they believe it's blasphemous to even try to portray any kind of image of God.
Okay.
Okay, so that's like a blasphemous thing. So, and Muhammad's, which is their supposed prophet, which don't get me started on that, but anyway, you're not supposed to portray him either. So that's why you don't see Muhammad movies. Like you see
Oh.
Jesus movies, but you don't see Muhammad movies. So they have this really strong sense of portraying God, like portraying him. And even within the church, there was arguments in the early centuries about what the church, like portraying God, like portraying Jesus. There was actually a schism, like a big division over whether you should have statues of saints and Jesus in your church or not. So we've got to be really careful with this.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I have thought about, I don't know why, like, the God picture in my head, I haven't thought about this, but Jesus, I've thought about, like, the way I picture him doesn't make any sense whatsoever when I think about, like, where he was from, like, his culture and
Right.
ethnicity.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, he was. Usually when we
Like-
think of him, we think of him as a white guy.
Yeah.
No,
Like, that
he
is
was
not,
not
what
a
he
white
looked like.
guy.
And I did see somebody once do, like, what they thought Mary would look like based off of the
Yeah.
Bible, like things
Yeah.
in the Bible. I'm like, well, that's not what I pictured.
Yeah.
Like, that makes more sense.
So now we're diving into a whole other area of what does our own cultural sensibilities do in affecting the way that we portray Jesus.
Right.
And yeah, he's.
Like, do you just picture him the way the people around you are?
Yeah. One thing.
But then that sounds
One
weird.
thing that I've
I
never,
don't know.
gosh, I know I'm really going off here, but it's an interesting discussion, right? Like one thing that I've always kind of laughed at is for those who believe, who are either anti-Semitic or they're racist, like a lot of those hate groups, like they believe in Jesus, but then they forget that the Jesus they believe in is Jewish, and that he's not white.
Right.
But
Yeah.
they still have hate toward.
Yeah.
It just makes absolutely no sense. But that's what happens when your cultural predispositions affect the way you look at your faith. And
Like,
yeah,
my life group has done like the story, right? And I picture all these people to actually look like Jewish, like probably kind of like how they would look.
yeah,
But then I picture Jesus as like just
Yeah.
the white guy. I'm like,
Yeah.
that doesn't make any sense.
yeah, yeah. It is weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, interesting. That was
Anyways.
interesting. I hope we cleaned up the initial Dumbledore discussion there a little bit. So,
You asked,
that's true. I did ask, and
and I was honest.
and I learned my lesson.
And then Travis asked, and I was
Yep.
honest.
We learned our lesson.
Yep.
Mistake on my part.
Yeah. So basically, what wraps up my notes is that I feel like I belong here and like with my church.
Good.
I feel welcomed and loved
should.
and
We should. That's the way the church should be. You should feel like you belong. Now, let me ask you this question. I'm already breaking my own advice.
I was gonna say
But I
we
think
just had this
I
talk.
think this one's a little. I think this one's a little safer though. But what? Okay, so we're supposed to belong.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens if you don't feel like you belong?
I don't know.
Do you like just leave? And
No, you just got to work on it.
So like in your family, if like maybe you feel like in some certain area you don't belong, do you just like leave your family and say? "Pfft,"
Depends on the
you
situation, I
all.
guess. I don't know.
so you would like totally.
You do what's right. Like,
But would you like totally disconnect from your family?
no,
No.
I wouldn't.
Okay. 'Cause
Unless it was absolutely necessary.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I ask that is I do, one of the concerns I have within the church today is that people are, they disconnect way too easily.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they get mad over the littlest thing.
I
And-
mean, your family, the church should be your like number one. Like your allegiance to God should come first, right?
Right.
But I feel like your family should come second,
Mm-hmm.
and you should work to try to work out your issues and stay faithful to
Yeah,
them too,
Yeah.
as much as possible.
That's exactly it. I mean, I think that if belonging to something is a two-way street,
Mm-hmm.
okay, Jesus, like we just read here in Ephesians a few minutes ago, Jesus invited us to be a part of the family, but we have to want to be a part of the family.
Right.
And that's one of the frustrations, I would say. Maybe this is my preacher soapbox moment. But one of the things that I've run into through the years is people say, well, I just feel disconnected from the church. And then I'll ask them, I'm like, okay, do you go Sunday morning? Well, not every week. Well, are you in a life group? Well, no. Are you helping in ministry? Well, not really. Okay, then where's the problem here?
Right.
It's not the church.
And
The church
it's-
wants you to belong. The
Right.
church wants you to be a part of it. You have to want it too. Yeah.
And I also feel like, though, sometimes as the church, we need to make sure people feel
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
like
and
they belong and are welcome.
You're totally right. I mean, the church could do a better job, no doubt. Not just our church.
I was going to say
any
the church in general.
The church in general could do a better job of helping people to belong.
But you have to want it.
Yeah, it's a two-way street. And yeah, so I was talking to somebody here a while back about how they felt like they were disconnected from the church and whatnot. But then even in the same conversation, they explained, well, we haven't. And I just walked away from it like, it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
belonging. We all want to belong, but you have to want it too.
Yep. I was going to just sing Pat Benatar. You know the song We Belong? You're a lot older than me.
Yeah, I know that song now. Yeah, we belong. Is that
Yeah.
it? Okay, yeah. That was my. I don't even know who Pat Benatar really is, but there's my interpretation of her.
You don't know who Pat Benatar? Even Travis, I think, is disappointed.
Well,
Are you?
What's that?
Wouldn't be the.
Are you disappointed that he doesn't know who Pat Benatar is?
A little bit.
Well,
I saw her in concert once.
Wouldn't be the first time I've disappointed you.
It's all right. It's all right. Anyways, what's next week?
So next week we're talking about becoming. So in other words, transformation. We're talking about a fancy word that we'll talk about Sunday morning. We've all heard it, and I've talked about it before, but it's sanctification. Do you remember that word?
Sanctification, yes.
Sanctification. Can you say it?
Sanctification.
There you go. Because I think you said sanctification is what you said
Oh.
first. Sanctification.
Sanctification.
It's a hard word to say.
It is.
Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about.
When you say becoming, I think of butterflies.
Yeah, like transformation. What is it like? You're a caterpillar, and then you go in a cocoon, and then
It's a chrysalis,
oh, that's right, chrysalis.
right? Or is
Yeah.
that just for monarch butterflies?
I have no clue.
I don't know.
I'm a
not
preacher,
a
not
I'm
an
not a bug
entomologist.
person. See, I just called it a bug person. I didn't even know what it was called. All right. Anyways,
Mm-hmm.
next week we'll talk
Yep.
about becoming. So
Mhm.
have a good week and watch us next week.